I wanted to have a wedding that did not follow cultural norm. We decided to get married around the world and have our marriage blessed in 7 unique countries. We were in 7 countries in 21 days. I had 7 wedding dresses. We had a photographer follow us around the world, and it was really intimate.
You said you went through some different struggles and challenges and stuff. How were you guys able to work together to overcome those?
Well, just to come straight out with it, it was 2021, January, the beginning of the year, and I figured out he'd been cheating on me. So I was like, okay, I can get through this. We were going to premarital counseling, we were going to therapy, but it was seeing his actions and seeing what he was doing and how he was changing that made me stay. And we've never been happier.
Hello, Project Ultimate Lifers. Today we have Alexis here with an amazing adventurous story that she is going to share, along with a lot of life lessons that I know you will benefit from. So, Alexis, how are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, how we got here to be in this time, space, and reality.
Well, I am good. Thank you for asking me to be on. Um, yeah, you were super brave, honestly. I don't know a lot of people that just randomly make friends on social media and then are like, by the way, I know we like just met. Would you be willing to share your life? So, and I'm happy to. So I'm good to be here. You want my background, like my whole background, or like
Just whatever you feel like you want to share. So basically today we're going to get into talking about, your adventures and all the things you've kind of been working on, even in limbo a bit over the last year. So
yeah.
what do readers or audience listeners need to know to kind of get us up to speed on like who you are and how we got to now?
Sure. They do say that most people read captions, so maybe part of this will have captions on it, so that those
Oh, it
who,
will.
good, good. Then they'll be reading it. So yeah, there you go. You weren't wrong. Okay. Well, let's back up. I was the black sheep always growing up, which I never thought I really should have been. I mean, I did the normal things. I was part of choir and got straight A's and did the normal life stuff. I guess you could say I was part of like the cool group. Like I didn't fall out of any sort of line. I was welcomed in most groups. However, there were telltale signs like performing when I was 3 years old in front of thousands of people singing and not being afraid somehow. And it being prom queen and part of an ROTC military camp at the same time while also playing hockey also telltale signs that that was a little bit stranger. When I was 13, my parents put me on an airplane to go live with a family in Denmark. That was pretty cool. I spent a summer there. And then in
So
college,
cool.
yeah, in college I lived in Spain. So I mean, I guess I was doing things that were considered normal and doing things that were not considered normal pretty much from a young age. But yeah, do you want me to dive into like post college and now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that right there just says to me it sets you up with a pretty cool foundation, which makes sense about the 6, weddings and whatnot that we'll get to. But having that kind of a foundation that must have influenced so much, right? Because it taught you a lot of things like attachment and the ability to probably be able to move in and out of spaces with ease. So tell us about college and then how all that manifested into your career and then now kind of the direction you're heading.
Yeah, I was probably, unsurprisingly, a pretty defiant child. Like it was a don't do this. It was the first thing I was going to do. So that led me into adulthood where I decided pretty much the month I graduated college that my, $60,000 broadcast journalism degree wasn't going to be used because that was just, I mean, like I'd done it now for 4 years. Why do I want to continue something? Let's try something new. And my parents basically disowned me and were like, wait, what? And I ended up finding a company called Rodan and Fields, and I was with them pretty much since. So it was about 13 years that I worked in skincare. It's a dermatology company. We created Proactive. I think I skirted on that with you privately, but we focused on anti-aging. I was 23. I knew nothing about anti-aging and realized I should probably move to a place where people cared more than they did in Minnesota, which is where I was from. So I bought a car, packed it, and moved to LA and found a house on Craigslist and lived with these 2 guys from Florida in LA, knowing nothing with this brand new career in direct sales. And I, was fed the dream that I was going to make $10,000 in the first month, which didn't happen. But I was like, I'm going to make it work. So I started accessing as much education as I could because, the $60,000 on a degree wasn't enough. I was like, I can get this education for free. So I was going to like UCLA classes. Stanford offered their classes for free over COVID, oddly and beautifully. Harvard and Mayo Clinic offered their medical classes for free, if just for something to do for people. So I accessed all of those through the 13 years that I was with Rodan and Fields. I lived all over. I started in LA, realized very quickly I did not like LA, and very grateful not to be there right now, though my heart is obviously with everybody who's affected by the fire. Still have friends there.
Mhm.
Moved over to Arizona. From there was in Minnesota for a brief time, then Canada and Australia, and then Boston. And in Boston, I met my husband. We moved to South Carolina. So that's how we ended up here. That
Very
was pretty much college on. Yeah, it was really fun. I had a team of like 500 women that I was working with, coaching, teaching, training. It was a blast. But in August of last year, Rodan and Fields kind of pulled the rug from under us and took away the coaching and teaching and training part that I had built for 13 years. So my income went from very livable to grocery money. So that is where I'm set up now, where your whole thing is about like manifestation and building a life that you want to live. And I am restarting in my mid 30s on doing that because I thought that was just Rodana Fields was just going to be it for me. That was it. That was everything. I had a great career, and it's opened. Actually, all of last year opened a whole door for me. Just leave it.
Yeah. And let's talk about that. So, just for readers, listeners to know, I was searching, the World Wide Web, and I came across your profile and I was like, wow, this girl seems so cool. She's got, weddings here and there and great photos, awesome, just like kind of a brand more or less of how you're, showing up online. So, I really need to meet this girl and see what she's all about because Project Ultimate Life is about your version of your ultimate life, whether it's traveling or healthy lifestyle and living and relationships and finance and career and all the things. There is no one direct path. The logo for the company literally is, I cycled across the United States when I was 24, and it's symbolic of the switchbacks of the mountain, right? But as soon as you get through that mountain and top and you break through, there's always another mountain to climb on the other side. So you climbed the mountain, you were doing super successful in one field. How does that kind of bleed into now this sort of reset or start for the next mountain that you're trying to climb? Are you afraid? Like, what are some of the stuff you've been going through?
Yeah, I think even the 13 years with Rodan and Fields, I went through that. I mean, there were days, where you obviously have imposter syndrome and you question if it's worth it. And being an entrepreneur is no joke. Like you have your ups and downs. You have months where you make $0 and you have months where you make six figures. Like you don't know what to expect a lot of times, especially when like COVID hit, everything kind of started going downhill. And I hung on and really watched my income post COVID decline rapidly every year. So by the time last year, when they did kind of pull everything away, happened, I wasn't even making half of what I had been making prior. So I was on I guess a back switch way on the bike where I was trying to figure out what to do. And at the beginning of last year, I knew going into 2024 that I was getting married. I'm a newlywed now. But also that something was happening in Rodan and Fields and in our industry and our economy in general that I needed to have another plan in place. So I started looking into content creation. My social media was pretty great. I mean, I'd spent a lot of time educating people on skincare on it, so it had grown. And I've been getting a lot of free opportunities, that will send you a free shirt if you talk about it. And I was like, well, I can do the free stuff. Why not try to get paid for it? So at the beginning of last year, I started a blog. And I think I mentioned to you, I cried like every week because I had no clue what I was doing, building a WordPress blog, which anybody who's ever tried to do WordPress, it's it's like the one that everybody's like, maybe don't. Just period. Maybe don't. WordPress is so difficult if you don't know tech. And
Yes,
I did it though. Yeah. Are you on WordPress?
I was. That's why I'm like mind blown.
You gave up. You're like,
Yeah,
you cried too many times. I just went one cry
yeah.
further. Yeah, it's a journey. It still is a journey. It's been a year. I still don't really understand it, but I'm somehow posting blogs on there and getting readers. So there's that. Um, in July though, no, excuse me. When did I get married? In May, I had my wedding. And social media was just kind of at that point a little fun thing. I was making a couple $100 a year. Redan and Fields was still my full-time career. But I had literally pitched to my husband to be that I wanted to have a wedding that did not follow cultural norm. I wanted something that brought us closer to God. We were Christians. So it's like, I want something that's going to dive our faith deeper than just throwing a massively expensive party for our friends and family. And I want something that's going to last a little longer. I don't want to blink like everybody says and have your wedding day just be over.
Mhm.
So we decided to get married around the world and have our marriage blessed in 7 unique countries in different cultures, where half of the people who did bless our marriage somehow through charades, we were able to get across to them what we were doing, uh, blessed our marriage or straight up married us in languages that we didn't understand or have a clue what they were saying, but you could feel it. Like you knew what they were saying to you. So we were in 7 countries in 21 days. We did it very quickly. Yes, I had 7 wedding dresses. We had a photographer follow us around the world, and it was really intimate. So we started in Scotland. We went from Scotland to Spain, Italy, Germany, no, excuse me, Spain, Italy, France, Germany, Canada, and then back to America. And we had a big reception here. So it was really cool. And since then, we learned so much that I've realized that there is this movement where we are living in a world where you can make up your own version of life. You don't have to live by cultural norms. And I decided, okay, well, I guess I don't know what I am anymore anyway, because Rodan and Fields has kind of pulled the rug from underneath us, and I'm trying this content creation thing, but I don't know if it's gonna actually work. And so I said, well, I guess I'm gonna be an author now. So that's still in the works because it's not published yet, but I wrote a book.
I love it.
So I have a full novel-sized manuscript in third-person narrative nonfiction. So it reads like a story. We did change our names in it. So it's like, Ellie did this, Cade did that. Those are our 2 main characters. And I go from the beginning of our relationship where there was riddled with trauma. And we had a lot of problems in our relationship. My husband had never been in a serious one. And then with COVID, we had to move in within a month because they were quarantining city by city up near Boston, or they were they were warning of it. And we went through a lot of mental health concerns just with COVID. I mean, my career started to shift. Obviously, he was working 6 days a week in a plant where he had to fire people for showing up to work drunk or not sitting on opposite sides of plexiglass, even though they were married. Like it was a weird time. So we went through some really, really rough scales. So the whole book starts with how we healed from that drama and then goes through all 7 countries and how we came out on the other side, what we learned culturally, what each country really focuses on within weddings, what's important, how people have a successful and healthy marriage according to their culture. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm at the beginning stages of trying to find a literary agent. That's a thing,
Very I
apparently.
love it. I love it. So, what are a couple of strategies you would say? So, when you hear your story or when you're looking, it seems like it's rainbows and butterflies, but you said you went through some different, struggles and challenges and stuff. How were you guys able to work together to overcome those?
Oof, oh man. Well, just to come straight out with it, because it's about to be published for the world to see. So there's no gatekeeping here. It was like 2021 and January, the beginning of the year, and I hadn't really seen any people for a few months. I mean, everybody had left the city. I lived in the heart of Boston. He had been working obviously a crazy amount. And I figured out he'd been cheating on me. So that was the first one. And it was really tough. I've never been cheated on. I mean, I was in my at that point, I guess, early 30s. And I was going to marry this one. This was it. I've been proposed to twice by past boyfriends and said no because I knew they were not right for me. And this guy, the day I met him, this is it. I'm going to marry this one. And so to see the emoji of a heart pop up on a phone, that nothing breaks your heart more than realizing the person that you love so much doesn't feel the same in that moment. And he was a shell of who he is now and who he was pre-COVID and pre the trials, obviously, that he had to live through. But it was about 3 to 4 months of like I lost 10 to 20 pounds. I finally, it never dawned on me that I could leave. And because of COVID, like, I don't know, it was like we were in this shell. I looked out my window and I saw cement, 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 and we were in a 600 square foot box and I was alone for months. I think I just became a different person. So I finally realized, oh, I have choices. So I did leave. I rented because I hadn't driven in years at that point. I rented a van, drove from Boston back to Duluth, Minnesota. I mean, to the point where I was so malnourished that I couldn't carry a box from the car to the shed just to store my stuff. Going back to my parents' house, so desperate to just survive. And
Mhm.
he was going through the same thing. It took us another month, and he called me and he goes, I just got slapped across the face about a week ago, and I've been trying to come to terms with that. And I mean, he again, we're Christian. So for anybody who is that, they kind of understand, that like the God we believe in just doesn't, there's timing for everything. And I think he just had to be open to it and let him in. And he finally did. And so he calls me and he's like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me, blah, 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 said all the right things, whatever. And bought me a one-way ticket back to Boston, which I took him back in a heartbeat because I knew how broken he was too. I had a lot of grace for it. And he had cut off ties with that woman at the beginning of the year. And we had only been together for 9, 10 months at that point anyway. So I was like, okay, I can get through this. And then I got a call from the second girl and realized, oh wait, he had cheated on me a second time. Again, in that time I was away, not after. But the healing process kind of had to restart. So we were going to premarital counseling, we were going to therapy, but the biggest shifts weren't even so much what I did, because I was 1 foot in, 1 foot out for like a year. Like there was no trust. I was just there because I knew I loved him and I knew what he was capable of. I had a lot of faith, but it was seeing his actions and seeing what he was doing and how he was changing that made me stay. So he was doing private therapy, not even with me asking. He was like, okay, I'm doing this for us. He was reading the Bible. He was going to church. He was the one suggesting all of it. He was cutting out certain people in his life that he knew weren't healthy. He offered job opportunities and growth that he turned down because he said, no, you are my priority. I'm not going to put myself back in a position where I'm going to be that stressed out again, ever. If it ever gets there, I'll quit again, which he did. He'd quit the original job when I said I'd come back. So it was those actions, I guess, that allowed us to heal and move forward. And even in the opening of the book, though, the prologue talks about when we got engaged. And it was about 2 years after this happened. And I gave the ring back that night because I said, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know. I mean, clearly I did. Here I am. I'm married now. It's been almost a year in June, I guess, May, June. But and we've never been happier. I mean, honestly, I'm so grateful I stayed. But it took a lot of just willpower and paying attention to signs and having a lot of faith and having a lot of faith in myself that I would be okay if I had to leave again.
What what did you learn about yourself the most in this journey and in this process?
Oh God, you can survive anything. I'm like, if I can survive entrepreneurship and I can survive being so malnourished and depressed that I probably should have been hospitalized and I could pull myself out of that, the brain is so powerful. I convinced myself for 3 months that this guy was not cheating on me with a second girl. Like 3 months, and that I couldn't leave. Like it was in a negative way convincing myself, but it was that powerful. So when I realized that and I took the power away of the negativity and I said, okay, channel that to good. And I realized that I had the power now to control where I ended up and my own life. And I started thinking, okay, a plan B, if this were to happen, what would I do? And I started getting some, plans in place for anything that would negatively happen. It took away that power and that fear that if it ever did happen to me again, that I wouldn't be okay. Because I would. And I did. And I was. And I am.
Hmm. Are you familiar with attachment styles?
Kinda.
Okay, there's like anxious attachment, secure attachment, avoidant, and then disorganized. I don't remember the disorganized one so much, but I was just curious if you did know or if that,
I
your
used
experience
to.
flared within it. Something to look into. It's really interesting.
Well, and I think I did. Like when we were first going through all that, I was learning everything I could about personalities. And like that's when I got into Enneagrams. It's when I read like the love language books. Yeah. So it was
Mhm.
all of those. So I mean, a lot of that knowledge now has kind of just gone out the window. But
Sure.
yeah, but I did look into it at one point.
Very cool. So I know that you had a lot going on in this time. As you had mentioned, you know, you were kind of shifting out of one career into another, and something pretty awful happened. You had your identity stolen. Do you feel comfortable saying anything about that, or what
Oh
did you
yeah,
learn from that?
that's another one. These last 5 years, I tell you, none of us came out completely okay. We all got scathed in some way, mentally, physically. COVID just caused havoc in the last 5 years for everyone. And yeah, last year, so when I started the content creation, I still, again, am learning what I'm doing. I still would say I have no idea, but things are happening somehow. There was a period where I was learning about pitching companies. And I was like, okay, this is, post the wedding. We're home. We had just bought a house. We had just moved in. Everything was new. I had a brand new house, a brand new husband. The wedding was over, and Rodan and Fields had not pulled the rug yet. I mean, that was like 2 weeks after all this happened. So, it was all this stuff at once, basically. But
Mhm.
yeah, I had pitched New Balance, the shoe company, because I can't wear heels. My feet are slightly broken. I ran my whole life, and bad shoes made all my bones be really dumb. Anyway, so I live in New Balance shoes, and I thought, gosh, I could represent them so well. Wrote them an email, was super excited about it, and I got a reply. And I was like, oh my God, New Balance has reached out to me. I was so excited. I can't even tell you. It was my first collab that was like, they were willing to pay me on a monthly basis. Like, they were like, yeah, this sounds fantastic. We love what you do. So I applied for the job, quote unquote, where it's like, we need to open a debit card for you in your name so we can deposit things in. And, this is a job that will hire you on a monthly basis as a subcontractor. They said all the right stuff. And I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, I'm brand new to content creation. Nobody's guiding me. I'm just failing clearly and figuring it out, or not figuring it out. Anyway, so I went to Italy with a friend of mine that week. I was so excited. And all of a sudden I started getting emails about um, loans that wanted to be opened in my name. And then I got another one about like a mortgage trying to be opened. And then I kept getting all these when I would get service in Italy, which I didn't, have my phone on me because I only used it on Wi-Fi. I would get these text notifications of codes that I had to give to sign up for something. And I was like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. So it did feel sketchy to me when New Balance refused to get on a call and started asking me for my social security number and billing information. And they were like, well, we need to know where to put the card. So the billing, a lot of it made sense. And at the same time, after I thought about it, I went, this doesn't really make sense. And so I started tracking the VPN of where they were sending the emails. I started tracking who was sending me the emails. And I went, oh my God, Alexis, this is what? How were you I was just so excited, right? It's an ignorant human mistake. But it was not New Balance. They had figured out somehow that I had emailed them, or coincidentally sent me an email. And it just wasn't the same New Balance. It was a fake New Balance account, and they had all my information. So that happened. Thank God nothing actually was stolen. I was able to shut everything down. I spent months on the phone with 15 to 20 different banks that loans had tried to be opened in on. People had tried to use it on car insurance. They will use it on your car, like rentals. They'll put your information for the rentals in case something happens for the insurance. I called the IRS. I let them know what was going on, and they gave me a special PIN to use. So if you have identity theft, that's a really good thing to do. They're actually surprisingly easy to get in touch with if you want to talk to somebody and say, I need a separate PIN so that when I do taxes now this year, I will have to give that PIN. And so I cannot lose it anywhere. But there are certain things you can do. Like, I ended up changing my name. I just gotten married, so it wasn't the end of the world. But yeah, if you've ever had to change your name, especially if you have to do it quickly, holy cow, that's a whole journey. And it was like $500 later, just to change your name. And I mean, your passport alone is $130 just to get renewed. And I travel a lot, so I needed one of those. In fact, actually, when it happened, I just sent my passport in, and then I got hired to do a job in Cancun on 3 different resorts. And I'm calling the US passport control going, please give me my passport in like a week. I need to do this job. And they did. They actually were very quick about it. But I feel like if you have identity theft, if you're observant and you're keeping your eye on things and you take control of it and you call, don't just dismiss it, you can get things solved pretty quickly. Like they had a hold. I have an Equifax now hold on my account, so it's frozen. Nobody can check my credit score anymore. So there are things you can do. I would say the top three would be Equifax, get something to get a freeze on your car, your credit, and then call the Social Security office, have the IRS get you a PIN. And then number three would be don't change your name. That's extreme, but make sure you're keeping your eye on everything and diligently calling anything that seems sketchy and just being like, is this really me? And they'll be like, nope, we'll shut it down. So those would be my three pieces of advice.
That's good. That's amazing. Wow, that's a lot. So between a new career, or a shifting of identity theft, more or less, and a new marriage and all this kind of relationship stuff was going on, how are you taking care of yourself? Like, how didn't you just have a complete mental breakdown and just pull the plug and call it quits on life?
I'm a big believer in things could always be worse, and I survived 2021. So if I can survive 2021, I can survive anything. I would say that last year, I don't know if I survived. I did not thrive, but as long as you survive, that's better than nothing. It was chaotic and wild. I was in 10 countries and 3 continents and 32 new cities. And I don't know what I was thinking. I think I was running and I was just looking for the next fun thing because I didn't want to deal with all the necessities and responsibilities back at home, like not having a job anymore and losing my independence by getting married. In my mind, that's what happened. And, like buying a house when I loved my apartment. I had no home ownership problems. And, they forgot to put a water line in our house. And we didn't have the internet when we first moved in. And my husband was traveling when our power went out for 11 days during Hurricane Helene, which hit us really hard and destroyed a huge part of the area that I'm in. It's been wild. So I would say that the ways I took care of myself during all that was, number one, this is going to sound funny. I purposefully don't own a vehicle because I don't like to work out. A lot of people go to working out because they're like stress reducing, burn, calories, and you get your antioxidant or whatever it is, your serotonin goes out. I hate working out. So I don't own a car. So I'm forced to walk everywhere. So I walked everywhere. And that helped. It got you outside. You were in the sun, you were in fresh air, you were moving your body. It's healthier. I feel like my body is already falling apart at 36. So I'm like, this is gonna stop my joints from hating me. Walking was huge. I also prioritized happy moments and romanticizing my life. So those small little things like your coffee in the morning, I don't even drink coffee. And I started because I'm like, I want to make the pretty lattes with the art and the little sugar crumbs. And so now of course I'm addicted. Like that was a bad idea, but also it brings me so much joy. Um, I also, with the content creation, I found that brought me so much joy because I could romanticize anywhere I was. If I was just on a walk down a river path, I could take a very pretty aesthetic video of the ducks swimming in the river and put a beautiful violin song to it. And I'm like, look, I'm living in my own Bridgerton life. Like,
Oh,
romance. Those are like the two main things. I got outside and walked, and I took the perspective of every little moment is special.
that's really cool. And
Thanks.
how important are relationships, friendships, family ships, these types of things to you? And how do you nurture those and make sure you're maintaining healthy connections besides
Yeah.
meeting strangers on the internet happily?
That's a question I've never been asked. And I don't, I would, I'm gonna, my instinct is to say I'm the wrong person to ask, but everybody is the right person to ask that of, because I think we all handle it differently and how to have relationships. And there are different ways that we handle trials or traumas or joys and all those things. I am an introvert, so I like to think I don't really need a lot of people. However, if I really think about it, that's not true. We're humans, we're pack animals. We do need relationships. And having moved so much, I'm sure you can understand this, having moved yourself all over the world. It's really hard when you move a lot to keep those relationships alive. So everywhere I've moved, first off, I will say with my husband, that is my number one most important relationship. We read the Bible together every night. We pray together every night. We play cards all the time. Our like romantic dates are going to a coffee shop and bringing, which is sitting right in front of me, a deck of cards. We play cards probably 15 times a day. So, because he works from home as well when he's not traveling. So with him, we have found little ways to connect and little things and just ways that we can really be together. With my friendships, then I've started pebbling. Please start using that term. I'm going to start trying to make it a thing. Fetch never
Oh,
happened.
noted.
Pebbling's gonna. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the process of sending memes or GIFs or reels that you find that you love that remind you of people. You send them to them. And I am really good at doing that. My poor best friends. I have like 3 of them, and they probably get 5 of those a day. So that are just things that make me think of them, that I'm reminded of. The third thing that I've done, though, because I'm an introvert, and I know that that's not necessarily healthy to be alone. Um, I do art. I do a lot of commissioned art too. Another one of my weird side ego lives. Uh, and my mom has always said you could never be an artist full time because you would turn into a little hobbit in a hole and you would disappear. And she's right, I would. So the way that I've gotten around that is I've networked a lot. So I started women's events where now we're up to like 80 women that will show up when I host them. And I do things like I host tea parties where I'll get companies to sponsor it, but then all the girlfriends that I love can just come and they post about it. And that's what's, in it for the company that's sponsoring the tea and the cakes and all the things. Um, but I find that that's really important because I'm not great at reaching out to people. I do big group events because then I see everybody and I don't feel like I'm not being social, but I can see a bunch of people at once and I don't feel like I'm hiding in a hole. And I pebble from my hole so that I can kind of at least have one foot out.
That's amazing. So you have done so many things and made so many transitions. And I'm sure somebody listening to this is like, holy cow, I could never do that, right? So fear, false evidence appearing real. Do you ever feel fear? You need to go travel somewhere or you're starting this new adventure. Is fear something that you experience, and how do you get through it?
Oh my God. Anyone who says they're not afraid is lying to themselves, which maybe it's a defense mechanism. So again, we have grace for that. We're like, we get it. You don't want to be afraid. But we all are. Everybody is. There's not a single person on this planet that I don't think has felt fear in doing something new. The question is, like you said, how do you overcome it? How do you handle it? How do you take it by the horns and say, you're not going to rule me? And I would say that's been my entire A, life, and B, primarily this last year. So when Rodan and Fields went away, oddly, even though I lost most of my income, it took a couple months to really sink in because I was so busy with like wedding and this content thing and writing the book and all that stuff. But I am still afraid every time I have to send a pitch to a company and ask them if I am worthy, is the way that I kind of look at it. You're selling yourself. I am asking them if I am a worthy person that they deem would be worthy to represent them. And if you get a no, that's hard. It's like rejection. And I think the biggest way is to, again, take the power away from that and realize that you're not getting rejected because of your own worth. You're getting rejected because they don't recognize your worth. So I have been pitching to literary agents for this book I'm writing. And I did send it to one person originally because I was like, I love my idea. I'm living in rose-colored glasses. They'll love it too. And she didn't even read the first query letter. And she sent me a message back and says, I don't work in memoirs. Good luck. And I went, but it's not a memoir. And I was like, okay, changing my wording, not saying it's me, literally not saying it has anything to do with me. It is just a narrative nonfiction story. But, and that helped. But that could have really hurt too, because somebody this is like bravery moment. Let's send out this 50,000 word manuscript that I've spent, 4 months writing and see what happens. And then to have them not even look at it and turn it down, it makes you question your own worth if you let it. I would say the number one thing that I'm facing right now with fear is, well, two. One, I met a woman in Mexico who's also a content creator and she does a lot of travel and she just moved to Thailand and invited me. And I don't know her very well. She's amazing though. And I loved her when I met her. So I'm like, sure, I'll fly across the world and stay with you in Thailand where I've never been. But again, that could be really scary. It's 12-hour flights. I have 2 of them back to back. But at the same time, I'm like, I've traveled alone. Why would I let this scare me? if worst case, if she ends up being a serial killer, I just leave and go and explore Bangkok by myself. So I mean, I took that. The second thing that I'm facing right now is we are ready when I get back from Thailand in April to start trying for a family.
Aw.
And yeah, I'm 36 and I've been on birth control for 17 years. I got off it in December and thought, I'll get pregnant right away. It'll be great. Nope, my body has not stopped bleeding in 2 months. So yesterday, I just went to, well, this last week, I went to two different doctors. Yesterday was the last one, and they did a bunch of blood tests and, the scans, and I got the fun women's lady stirrup time, which we all absolutely hate. And I'm prepping my body so that when I'm back from Thailand in April, I can start prepping for that. But you want to talk about fear, bringing a human into this world. Whew, every woman who does that is brave. And I just have to tell myself I'm not the first one. People have been doing this for thousands of years. That's it.
They have since the beginning of humanity, literally.
Yep. And a lot have died. So that's the part I don't think about.
Yeah, try not to block that. Pretend it doesn't
Exactly.
happen. I get it. That sounds awesome. Going back to your book thing, because of course, with this new motherhood experience, you can write a book about it. I'm sure it will be awesome. Let's double the number of weddings for baby showers and just like, make it
Oh
exciting.
yeah.
Would you consider self-publishing your book, or what would stop you from doing that?
Yeah, I debated it. I talked to a lot of people who have, and they said, your first book you self-publish, you make $0. And I went, I don't have a job. I can't really rely on something with $0. So I also really am not writing the book for me. I'm writing the book again, going back to just my faith. Our whole journey is enwrapped in our faith and how God has worked in our lives. I mean, even in Spain, we couldn't find a church that was willing to meet with us. There were no churches. There were cathedrals, but they were all just volunteer run. So we ended up walking into a convent. Neither of us have been in one. And in Barcelona specifically, they speak Catalan more than Spanish. I can get by with Spanish. I could not even tell you the first word of Catalan. And we wandered into this convent, and I mean, this is the kind of stuff you can't make up. Like, this is the kind of thing where if we hadn't walked down that street at that time, we're in Spain for 2 days, that's it. And it was all God. We ended up wandering into this sanctuary. There was no one in there. It was this beautiful Spanish, probably ancient sanctuary. The tiles had probably been walked on since, I mean, that place had to have been built in 700, 800 BC or AD, excuse me. And there was one woman who was cleaning the floor, and she didn't speak any English. So we're motioning to her, ring, ring, married us. We like kiss each other's cheeks, hug, whatever, married, ring. And she goes, oh. And we then figured out how to use Google Translate. So that helped a ton. We Google translated for her on the phone, and she's like looking around. No one's there. She's just like, I'm assuming, what's the person when they're a nun in training? She was the nun in training. There we go.
Yeah,
We're gonna
of course.
go. But there's a name for it, and I have it in the book, and I of course can't remember. Anyway, this 90-year-old little crippled old man walks around the corner, and she's like, Pedro. And we're like, oh my God, where did this man come from? And she kind of like very quickly talked his ear off, smiling, laughing. He doesn't say a word. He takes our hands, both of us, shuffles us to the front of the sanctuary. He climbs the 2 stairs slowly up to the front, grabs this huge book, slams it on the podium or whatever the thing is at the front of the altar, and opens it up to a page that he clearly knew. And he asked our name. I'm assuming that's what he was asking for. We gave it. I was like, well, first, my husband's name is Chase. And he's like, Chase. He's like, yeah, sure. I didn't even try. I'm like, Alejandra, just Alejandra. We'll stick with that. He knew that. And he married us. Like, he was saying like the act in Latin, not even in Catalan. He was speaking in Latin, and he married us, and he told us to kiss. And he was like, basically making us hold hands. And he married us right then and there. And that was it. We walked out of that convent like crying, first off, but also just like, how is this real life? How does that happen? So the whole book is just, I mean, it's miracle after miracle after miracle after miracle of person that we met that was willing to meet with us, that gave us those moments of blessing. We were handfasted in Scotland. We were married by a priest that was walking down the street in Italy, in Pienza, this tiny little town where nobody's ever there. And It was really interesting. Sacré-Cœur in Paris, of all the famous churches we could have possibly had it in. And so I wrote the book, not necessarily for our own memory, but because I want other people to learn two things. One, you can overcome anything. With us, it's through the power, power of God, but also that you don't have to do things normal, that you can live this life that like you are really doing a great job at of telling people they can do is that they can make up whatever life they want to live. That's pretty much what we did. So I'm putting the book out there for that. And that being said, long story short, sorry, that was really drawn out,
Well,
is
so good. I love it.
I'm a storyteller. Okay. But long story short is I don't want to self-publish because it won't get pushed far enough. I want to see this like the show on Netflix that just came out. Nobody Wants This. If you saw it, super cute. It was one of the top watched Netflix shows of 2024, and it's religious. It's about Judaism. I want our book to become a limited series on Netflix because it can educate so many people on those two messages. And I want people to be able to read this and go, my marriage is falling apart, but this gives me hope that it can fix it because I've seen it work for others, things like that. So self-publishing is off the table because I'm not doing it for me, beyond the fact that I do need an income. I haven't really had one in a while. So, there's that. But
Everybody, yes, I get it.
yeah, everybody, we got to survive somehow, right? The hustle, there's no harm in the hustle, but it really is more than that. And that's really the biggest reason I would say that I'm
Very
not.
cool. Very cool. So if somebody were wanting to do something really exciting, all right, you kind of just gave them some tips, but just sort of to kind of wrap this up, unless there's anything else that you would love to share as like a message. Um, if somebody were at the beginning of their journey and they were wanting to be really strategic and backwards design their life, or they're fantasizing about weddings and countries and these types of things, what advice would you give them?
Start a plan. Ground one, how would you do it? What is the first step? Is it pick a date? Is it find a flight that's worth the money, that's cheap enough? Is it talk to the people that you care about most and see if they'd be on board to support you? But start a plan and write it down. Like a plan without, what is it? A dream without a plan is just a wish, or a wish without a plan is just a dream. There's a thing that's about something like that, where if you don't make it actionable in digestive chunks, it will never happen. Like when I first got the idea, um, the only reason I even thought, okay, I can do this is because I found a photographer right away that wanted to come with us. And I was like, that's the most important part for me. I want to document this life. I want to document this memory. I want to document how we do this. And so I was like, okay, cool. Now I roped somebody else in. What's the next step? Okay, pick a date. So it's taking one actionable step at a time, writing it down, getting a plan in place, and then checking it off the list as you go. That's pretty much it.
I love it. Okay, well, that about wraps it up. If somebody wanted to read your blog, follow you, how would they get a hold of you?
The easiest is probably Instagram. You can connect with my blog, you can connect with my email, you can connect with everything off Instagram. And you just have to get ready because we're starting 7 mini honeymoons. So there's gonna be
What's your Instagram name?
the Instagram name is Class and Sunshine. So like a class you would be in, a classroom, I guess, class and then sunshine, bright and happy. It's a pink background photo. My name is Alexis Thompson, if you find it, but please give me a follow. I'd love to bring along new friends on the adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolute joy, pre-interview to interview to, I'm sure, post-interview as well. And I look forward to seeing your adventure and following you. And yes, thank you.